The following tape is my witness statement on the now closed stalking case that took place in October of 1986 in Norfolk. At the time of this recording, it's currently 8:44 p.m. on the 16th of October, 1994, approximately 8 years after the crimes took place. My name isn't of any concern, nor is my location. If this case gets reopened, don't expect any further assistance from me. Tom Sutherland, as you should be aware, is no longer in Norfolk, as he ran away from here shortly after this commotion had come to an end. I've kept in touch with Tom, who seems to be doing alright, at least for now. What I'm sure you're most curious about though is what I know about his stalker, and frankly, I know all too much. I can't tell Tom who it is, for reasons you'll find out later, but I will let you in on some of the answers to the questions that have occupied the thoughts of this whole town for almost a decade. Tom had just moved out of his apartment and bought himself a house, right here in Norfolk. It was a little unusual for a young man in his mid-20s to decide to live in such a small town like this, but he seemed like a pretty introverted guy, so no one really thought much of it. He slowly settled in and got to know the townsfolk. Things were going great for him, up until he started getting these phone calls. At first he'd get 3 to 4 of them a day, and all they'd be was heavy breathing on the other line. He tried to shrug it off as just some kids trying to mess with him, but he was a pretty timid guy and it didn't take a lot to shake him. But things hadn't taken a turn for the worst until whoever was on the other line started talking. He would describe over the phone down to a T what Tom was doing, where he was, how he was dressed, and all kinds of creepy details. Even though there was no clear, immediate threat to Tom's safety, these phone calls were enough to cause him sleepless nights and remain in a constant state of dread. I can imagine all he would have thought about was who this guy was and what his intentions were. Was this just a creepy townsperson who was keeping tabs on Tom and liked to scare people shitless, or was something more menacing going on? He decided he wasn't going to take any chances and filed a police report, but regrettably they didn't seem to take him seriously at first. He was told that there was nothing they could do and to contact them if he fears that he's in physical danger. So word started to spread around Norfolk that Tom was being harassed by some ominous unknown stalker, but most people stubbornly refused to believe him. Due to his young age and only just recently moving into the town, people found his extraordinary claims to be suspect. Suffice to say, they thought it was nothing more than a miserable plea for attention, but what was chiefly concerning Tom right now wasn't what the townspeople thought of him. It was that the stalking had gotten worse. At random points during the night, he heard movement coming from directly outside his house, sounds only a human could make. Light taps and scratches on the windows when the curtains were closed. But perhaps worst of all was a particularly chilling series of voicemails that were left on Tom's phone that I'll play for you now.
Hey there, Tom. I'm watching you. Have you checked the letterbox, Tom? I'll be waiting for you to write me back.
In the letterbox, there was a dirty Polaroid picture. It was blurry and hard to decipher, but after a few minutes of trying to make out what it was, he realized it was a close-up shot of him in his sleep with what appeared to be a knife pressed up against his neck. He had to choke back tears and vomit, but on one level he was relieved as he saw it as an opportunity to get the police to finally take action. When he called them, they sent 2 officers to his house to investigate. He explained everything that had happened, but although they believed him, they had deemed the photo to be insufficient as evidence due to its static and unclear appearance. And despite his protests, they had to go by the books and couldn't do anything about it. Over the next few days, Tom was living in a sheer state of never-ending terror. He felt chills when he'd hear the floorboards creak or the phone ring. He desperately wanted to leave, but he didn't have anywhere else to go or anyone to confide in. One night, as he was sitting on the floor sobbing, he felt a chill run down his spine as the lights in the house switched off. He began to breathe heavier and faster. It felt like his heart was pounding in his chest a mile a minute, and sweat started oozing off his palms as he slowly lifted his head up, turning his attention towards a horrifying figure standing in the hallway, gazing back into his eyes. unblinking, unmoving, accompanied with complete silence. As the realization of what was happening settled in, he let out a blood-curdling scream, grabbed a vase from the table and threw it at the man's head as he bolted out the door and ran hysterically into the nearby woods, never to be seen by any of the townspeople again. Aside from me, of course. After all, one vase wasn't enough to stop me from following him.